What's up? I'm Glyphix, and 100 Years of Solitude is the best book ever written. Now, if that wasn't enough of a hint at how much I really like this thing, the fact is, the first time I read it, I literally got to the last page, finished it, and immediately went all the way back to the start and read it the whole way through again. I read it about 4 times now. Every single time it gets better. It's one of those books that is... It's not an easy read, but it is dense. And the more you kind of get into it and the more you take care reading it, the more you get out of it. It's rare for that to be the case, that you get more the more you read the same thing over and over again. So to break this up a bit, I'm going to talk a bit about the genre and the writer, then a bit more on the plot, and then finally maybe some quotes, maybe final thoughts, that kind of thing. So first up, this thing was written by Gabriel García Márquez. Pronunciation, don't at me. And is a genre called magical realism, which, to be honest, I kind of hate calling a little bit because it gives people the wrong kind of idea. This is very much, a realistic story. Magical realism is basically where the writer throws in some weirdness into an everyday story. And if it's done correctly, like it is in this, you kind of barely even notice it. You'll often be doing double takes, like, did that really just happen? Is he not dead? Is that a ghost? Is that... it's written about in such a matter-of-fact, everyday life kind of way that you often barely even notice that the magical elements are there. It's totally not the focus of the story at all. And that is a sign of magical realism done well. It's more like realism with some magical elements in the background. If you like this genre, and maybe you read 100 Years already, there's another writer, Haruki Murakami, who does magical realism also really, really well, a Japanese writer. In particular, Kafka on the Shore was amazing. But anyway, back to 100 Years. So to give you an example of the kind of magical stuff going on, it describes a dead man who arrives in the town, and he's been dead a long time, and when he arrives, he explains, the reason I haven't been here already is because nobody has died in this town yet, so the town wasn't on the maps of the dead. And again, it's just said in passing, kind of, and all this is kind of just happening in passing, and it's just told in such a matter-of-fact way. In the context of the story, you completely buy it. It's like, yeah, that totally makes sense. That's logical, right? That's logical. Nobody died. The dead don't know where it is. Simple, right? So to move on to the plot a bit, the story is basically about this family, the Buendias. Buendia. And it tells the story of their family over 100 years, hence the name. So charting the generations to generation to generations to generations. And it's all set in this town of Macondo, which is a Colombian fictional town that kind of emulates and is similar to a lot of Colombian towns that do exist. And it's largely set within the family home. Like the vast majority of it is. So it's kind of obvious where the 100 years comes from, right? Like I said, 100 years of the family. Now, in terms of the solitude element, it's almost like this whole family is cursed in a way with this affliction of solitude and being prone to feeling solitary and lonely and ending their lives alone. And in a way, it is quite sad, but it's also a very uplifting kind of tale. Also, the family has a tendency to name everybody the same, which can add some confusion. So if you are reading this for the first time, I kind of recommend to just Google a family tree. It's not really going to spoil anything, but just Google a family tree just to have by the side for as you're reading, because it can be kind of hard to keep track of who's who. So the book also actually brings in elements of real happenings that went on in Colombia's past. So I already mentioned the wars between liberals and conservatives, but also there is a moment in the book that mirrors a really awful massacre that happened from the United Fruit Company, which is now branded as Chiquita. You will have seen their stickers on bananas all over the place. But again, this is where that mastery of the magical realism comes into play, because he's not only telling a story in factual, everyday terms, he's also pulling from real life and pulling things into it, and then using the magic in the background to just enhance the story and to kind of highlight things that are happening. For example, there's constant repetition within the family, people doing the same things over and over again, and that kind of is just highlighted by the ghosts that sometimes turn up. So to get to my final thoughts, obviously, yeah, I love the book. The reason I wanted to make this video is because I love it, and I got to talk about it because I'm really passionate about it. I realized that this is probably not going to do great on YouTube, but hey. Now, the book is not what I would describe as an easy read. It's very kind of dense. There's a lot of information that's thrown at you, and also it jumps around timelines. You know, suddenly it'll be talking about something that happens 30 years in the future, but then it goes back to the present day, but present day is kind of a bit fluid as well. And on top of that, you've got all the names that are basically the same. But you really should just stick with it because it is so worth it. So this book led to Marquez winning the Nobel Prize for Literature. If that doesn't tell you something, then I don't know what will. Anyway, I'm Glyphix. Thank you all for watching. Please do drop a like on the video. I respond to all my comments, and I will see you next time.